Some dude I found on Facebook has a band camp. Not super. I don't expect many people to have heard of this. Um, but let me just read. Do I have the Bandcamp page pulled up? Yeah. Let me read the description from the Bandcamp page because I think that gives a good idea of what it actually is. Um, This performance took place in the ruins of an old Franciscan Abbey on Sherkin Island off the coast of Ireland. For the Open Ear Festival, all sounds were produced in real time, originating from the bioelectrical fields of 4 plants growing in the ancient Abbey courtyard. These were rough hawksbit, dandelion, daisy, and Ribwort plantain. All living organisms produce a faint electrical current which constantly fluctuates according to the state of the organism. Uh, this current can be amplified and adjusted using a control signal for an oscillator, producing a sound which directly reflects the state of the organism. These vigorous rhythms of the plant at midday in midsummer can be heard here. That's the best description that I could think of for it too. That's what I just posted. Even when I posted it in the music club, that's what I in the Discord. That's what I did. I was like, there's no better. I couldn't come up with a better description than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess just launching into it.
Yeah.
Reading the description, I was definitely kind of like seeing what was on the label. I was wondering, there were a couple of ways he could have approached it, like using plants for control voltage, right? Because realistically, not knowing off the top of my head what sort of frequency we could expect from the oscillations of plant, electric fields, I was like, this is either going to suck or it's going to be kind of cool and rhythmic. Unfortunately, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think using percussive elements rather than more overtly tonal elements was 100% the right decision.
Yeah.
And using it because it sounded like, if I'm not mistaken, like the oscillations of the plants were mostly being used for triggers. There was some amount of pitch control occurring, but that may have just been like a rhythm is pitch type thing, right? Where they would start to, or he may have been patching it into multiple points, because I'd be interested in seeing his setup.
Yeah, definitely.
But like trying to orally reverse engineer, it sounded like for the most part the oscillations were basically being used to trigger fairly consistent percussive sounds, but still resulted in this cool kind of polyrhythmic. I mean, polyrhythmic's not really the right term, because nothing was nesting perfectly neatly.
But polyrhythmic is sort of the effect that it achieves many times, where you have these different rhythms that catch up with one another and will form different patterns based on where they are, and they'll
yeah. I mean, purely just insofar as it doesn't match up to any sort of real grid.
Right. Yeah.
And there aren't neat mathematical relationships between. There are at times, but the fact that there's not a consistent, neat mathematical relationship between the rhythms is more what I meant in saying it's not quite polyrhythmic in the sense that we tend to think of it. But.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Was the high-pitched, like, droning sound? I can't tell if that was a synthesizer or if there were crickets in the background. I guess it was midday, so probably not crickets.
Yeah, I mean, it took place at a festival, so it could be a different synthesizer, but I feel like that might have been another one of the plants. I'm not sure.
So that, I'm going to guess, was either a plant that he knew had slower oscillations or something, because that did change pitch, but having only one major tonal element was again really smart, because if he had been using them as pitch controls rather than triggers, it would have been a lot more dissonant and unpleasant, I think. Which is not to say that, I think based on a lot of the music I listen to, I don't consider dissonance inherently unpleasant, but like it would have just been sort of like really atonal without any sort of intentionality to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's doing a good job of harnessing these fields in a way that's still going to be sonically pleasing. He has a fucking huge discography too. Jesus Christ! Looking at his Bandcamp, like God, the man has built an entire career out of bioelectric.
Not all of it. Not all of it is bioelectric stuff. I listened to some of it. That's one of the reasons why I picked this specific one that I did, because it is the most bioelectric, but also like compositional. Like some of it is like straight up noise stuff. Some of it's bioelectric stuff with human bodies, which is also interesting. But like, and then there's like other stuff that's like he has like a group that he works with, and like, so like, it seems like there's a various different things that he does.
Yeah. And I suppose it is worth saying, as much as I was saying, it sounds like he's just using these oscillations for triggers. It is possible that they are just really low frequency oscillations and that they're being used as a pitch control, but if they're low frequency enough, as we've discussed on previous episodes, that will be perceived as rhythm and not pitch.
Right. Low frequency oscillation.
What I thought was the sound triggering may have just been like different. Like maybe it was a saw versus a square versus a sine waveform clicking at really low frequency. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
actually don't know that I know that a 10 hertz. I actually don't know that I know what a 10 or like 5 hertz sine wave sounds like. I know saw waves click, but
yeah, it's hard to say with something like 10 or 5 hertz. Can one even truly say they've heard that note? Because it's not so much. Well, the sound wave is so large that one could only experience it with their entire body. Even if, like, your eardrum is so small, having it vibrate at that low of a frequency doesn't... you can do it, it's just that's not going to be the only thing. Like, in order to get your eardrum to vibrate at that frequency, a lot of the rest of your body would have to be.
Yeah. Again, it's going to be rhythm, not pitch at that point, which is why with a saw wave you'll hear clicks. I don't know what sine waves sound like or sine or square, right? So again, I don't know if he was using them for triggers or for
I mean, a sine wave
controllers at really low frequency.
Like, a sine wave would be what you would imagine, just more so than hearing, just feeling, because it is the pure frequency, right? There's less overtones, so it is more just ooh, like, I don't know. Yeah. Do you have anything to say about this, Brian? About this album?
I mean, I think Sam touched on a lot of the technical stuff for the album. For me, it was... I mean, I guess it's not really... Is it an album? I mean, is that how we'd classify it?
I don't know. I mean...
A performance?
Yeah, I suppose it is a live... It is a live performance.
I mean, I thought it was from an idea of combining, science and music. This certainly exemplifies how, obviously, all of sound is very scientific, but this really takes it to another level.
Right.
And I think it's very unique, and as Sam said, it could have been an unmitigated disaster. I mean, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it was very creatively well done.
Yeah, and I think in general, like when you get into any sort of experimental audio, it can be tempting. I do like that he managed to like give the plants control enough that like it really is like authentically capturing their rhythms while still doing just enough massaging to ensure that it would actually be like pleasing to listen
Musical?
to. Right? It's certainly,
Yeah.
yeah, certainly not like catchy.
Yeah.
In that there were some things that felt like motifs, right? Just as a result of the naturally occurring rhythms of the plant, but not anything that's like going to get stuck in your head. But it's still nice. It was still nice to listen to. It works very well as background music. And that's definitely an art form unto itself, because it's I can imagine a lot of people would be afraid to cede that level of control and random and allow that level of randomness into a performance. And it could have been like he could have forced it through a quantizer or something, right?
Yeah. Right.
He could have forced this stuff onto a grid, and that would have made for a more like, oh wow, man, like for people who aren't. That could have created this artificial sense of like, well, man, the plants are like just supernaturally musical, but it's much more authentic to like let the kind of meandering, not perfectly synced rhythms occur. And I like that he did that and still managed to make it sound nice.
I would be interested in expanding on this idea. Like, what if someone were to just take like one plant, or like take these like a few plants and like just like put like one instrument on it, and then have a human improvise along to the rhythm of the plant.
Did you see the video that I posted to the group chat the other day? It wasn't a plant, but
No.
A cricket got into our house, and crickets actually chirp, as I'm sure we've noticed, at like really remarkably consistent
Oh yeah, like BPM,
with a
yeah.
pretty direct relationship to ambient temperature, actually.
Right.
But yeah, there was a cricket in our house, and I started like drumming along to it because he was playing what sounded like pretty good 16th notes.
There you go.
He had kind of an 808 swing going on. And when I got too loud, it like messed him up a little bit.
You messed him up.
Yeah, the cricket. But I mean, he was playing pretty solid straight 16ths. But that's not me trying to be like, like, oh yeah, man, like I'm doing that kind of shit. But I think you're right, in that there's like harnessing natural rhythms and like vibing with them and improvising to them as a human, I think creates this really cool relationship with the natural world. And it would have been interesting, and I think it's harder. It's going to be harder as a musician to like improvise along with something that's going to have a real loose sense of rhythm at the very best, right? Like a plant's going to be fluctuating randomly. But I think that would be cool to enlist plants as your collaborators, right? And I think you're right that taking one plant or something would be a way to simplify that process for yourself.
Well, and to musicify the process, I think.
While still allowing the plant to kind of...
Yeah, to do whatever it does, right. Because, I mean, when you have so many disparate chaotic elements, the more elements that you then add on top of it, just the more chaotic it becomes. I think 4 plants was a good choice for this, because you could still kind of mentally keep track of everything that was going on, and it still sort of made sense. If it was like, say, 50 plants, it would have been insane, and you wouldn't have been like able to hear anything. But like, truly, to be one with nature, one has to be one with every plant, and not just one plant. But, you have to meet it at the ability that you have to perceive, and I think a lot of music does do that, and I think a lot of, like, noise and experimental music does that. It's sort of a synesthesia right? You are taking what was once imperceptible and making it into something that approximates something that you're used to hearing, aka music.
Yeah. And I think that gets into that sort of picks up a conversation we had during our discussion of the Bonobo album, right? And that there's this sort of deficit in language with respect to like oral art, audio art, right? And that, you know, we have essentially the two categories. We have sound design and we have music.
Yeah.
If you look at any other art form, any other sensory or experienced art form, right, like architecture, or any visual, or like a visual, or like even a kinesthetic art form, like we have so many different words for all of these different species of art, and it's really fascinating to me, particularly given that you could, like, in genre labels, we can hear the difference in ethos and intentionality.
Right. Yeah.
But we still call all of it music, despite the fact that, and I say that, like, I don't mean that as like, I can't believe this counts as music, because I think it does. But the fact that we don't have a more robust lexicon that like reflects the complete difference in intent between somebody like Bonobo versus somebody like Led Zeppelin, you know, an act like Led Zeppelin versus an act like Philip Glass.
Right.
Like, there are people who are going to have very architectural approaches to their music, and there are going to be people who have very kinesthetic, like felt sense approaches to their own music. And I think those are such different disciplines, right? It's a shame that we haven't developed a more robust language around it. Right?
No, I agree. And I think the only people that have really even brought that to light to any degree have all done it negatively. It's all people going, well, hip-hop isn't music. Well, this isn't music. Jazz music isn't music. Rock and roll isn't music. You know, the Ben Shapiros of the world. And those people are wrong. Like, those people are...
Please go watch the Adam Neely video on the white supremacist history of music theory as taught in modern institutions. It's great. He dunks on Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
If you've seen us before you've seen Adam Neely, on the one hand, awesome. On the other, that's surprising.
Yeah. Agreed.
Go check that fucking video out.
Yeah.
It was really good.
But, like, in a sense, what those people are saying is the same thing that what you're saying is, when I hear this, I don't feel the way that I feel like music should make me feel. Like music, right? These people, like, if you only listen to classical music, right, and then you heard hip-hop, you're gonna be like, what the fuck is this? And I understand what they're saying, they're just doing it in an ignorant way. But, like, they can be so dramatically different that, like, I cannot,
And, it's like, if a person has if one person has an appreciation for architecture and another has an appreciation for paintings, right? Like, I don't know that we think that those people have any reason to argue with one another.
Right.
And I don't think we have any reason to say that, well, an architect is an artist and a painter's not, right? Or vice versa.
Right.
I think we're more than willing to concede that both of them are doing art and engaging in self-expression on very different scales and with very different intents and things in mind. But it's weird that we don't do that with music, just because it's, I guess, well, fucking all art gets commodified, but, like, it feels like so much of what's become restrictive about it has just been, like, for convenience.
Yeah.
When we talk about art, I mean, because generally speaking, if someone uses the term art, the average person is going to think of a painting.
A painting, yeah.
Even though there are performance artists, and then performance artists are broken down to musicians, actors. I mean, it all breaks down to a variety of different subcategories of it. So there's so many different types of art where it's like once you get into that subcategory of musician, then we don't have that easy breaking it up that we do for whatever reason. just because there's still so many similarities.
Right.
I mean, yeah, there's plenty of hip hop. If you ask me, is that musical? I'm like, no, that sounds like trash, but it is musical. I'm using the term. It's still music, right? It's
Right.
not pleasing to me.
Right.
Neither is country music, but it is musical. It is music.
Right.
So we have, whereas there's a clear distinction between a painting on a canvas and a, playing an instrument, or architecture, which is even further up, but still art.
Right.
So yeah, we have that sort of how we break it up in our heads, and this is definitely.
But I think that's more a
different
testament to our like a lack of development in our ways of seeing and experiencing than it is like any fundamental. Because I could just as easily say, well, what the fuck is the difference between what an architect's doing and what a sculptor's doing? They're designing objects.
Right.
Right.
They're arranging matter in space, as opposed to, you know.
I think it has to do with the way that the language is developed. I think that we just don't have the language there to describe things as differently. And I think that the way that people view reality is so predicated based on language and people have no idea how that affects on a day-to-day basis, but we just don't have language for it, and therefore we just don't even think about it. Like,
yeah, it's a very good point.
I think that's a deficit worth addressing, right? I think that might be part of the challenge of the 21st century for audio artists, right?
Right.
Is starting to develop more of a lexicon.
Yeah, we need a Shakespeare to come in and come up with a bunch of words that are then,
and just help like push like our kind of awareness and like our intensely visual cultures, like modes of seeing and modes of perceiving, forward in the realm of audio, so that we can, not forward, but towards something more inclusive and expansive and like sensitive to differences in intent and scale, and because it is, I mean, the one really crucial difference between a sculpture and an art and a building versus music is that I can't put the building in my iPhone.
Right. Well,
I can't really put the sculpture in my iPhone. I can put images of it. I can put reproductions of it.
Right.
There,
but like,
which gets done.
Well, and the purpose, I think, is a big difference as well. Because I mean, a sculpture, I was going to say size, but that's not true at all. Sculptures can be
tiny, yeah,
large, and they can be tiny.
Yeah.
So.
One thing that I just thought of on the iPhone, it relates, is, okay, so why does someone buy a MacBook versus building their own PC and running Linux on it? The reason is ease of access, right? The MacBook is literally built for you to understand things just by interacting with them. Whereas the other one is the opposite, right? Is you have to create your ways of interacting. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to, is we need some form of way of making it easier for people to perceive naturally. It needs to feel correct, because I don't think a lot of people are willing to, and I mean reasonably. Like, if you asked me to I cut myself off. Many people reasonably aren't willing to put in a lot of effort into learning something that they don't care about, or something that's just a passing thing, right? If you told me I had, like, sports, right? You have to learn all the rules of baseball in order to enjoy watching baseball, well, then I don't want to watch baseball, right? It's dumb. And then once you learn all the rules, you watch it and you're like, oh, well, this is fun. I mean, some people would disagree. It's never fun. But it's sort of the same thing, is how do we make the rules of music, of audio design, of the oral space, how do we make those rules perceivable? How do we draw those circles, you know? How do we go from here to being here?
Well, I think with audio, more so than certain other things that you're going to interact with, a lot of that is physiology. How what you perceive as pleasant is in part physiology, it's in part conditioning, because there's people.
That's as true visually as anything else. That is as true for visual input as it is for audio, though.
I would agree with you to an extent. I think audio even more so, just because of, yes, there are physiological differences we can have in how we perceive colors and things like that, but a lot of that can, with the exception of certain physiological limitations, there's learning to that can be done, whereas with audio there's things that no matter how much you listen to and how much you try and take it in, you're just never going to perceive that pleasantly.
Yeah, again, though, I think that's some people will hate specific colors, right? Like, and if we assume that there's a relative, that, I mean, there's the whole philosophical rabbit hole of, like, do we know that any of us perceive colors the same way?
Right.
No, but we agree to call them the same shit. But, like, we all have different relationships to different colors. We all have different relationships to different spaces, right? Like, one person might be agoraphobic, another person might be claustrophobic. So I don't know that we can reduce it to just being like audio as being this like more physiologically idiosyncratic domain, because again, I think you just looking at the ways people dress, the way the spaces people feel comfortable in, there's incredible variance there too.
I mean, I don't disagree, but I think there's more so when it comes to audio than there is for visual perception. There is a reason that if you sit down and even somebody who's colorblind or has a form of colorblindness says, I want to just get into art appreciation, I want to sit and study and learn it and pick out all the nuances. It is easier to do that, I would submit, than it is to do that with audio. You will be able to say, I don't particularly care for the way this looks, but there is something particularly that can be offensive when it comes audio versus visually. Because you're literally interacting with physical sound waves, and I think that's what makes the difference.
Okay, so you're yeah, I see a little bit what you're saying there.
I don't think it's the fact that you're interacting with sound waves, because with visually you're still interacting with light particles that are hitting your eye. Yeah. I think it's the time it takes to listen to a song is much greater than the time it takes to look at a painting. And so therefore you have to be willing to spend that time with that art. And if it's art that you dislike, you're going to dislike it more because of that time. Whereas a painting, you could just look away, right?
That's very true.
Another thing is we have so many more books written on old paintings and architecture and whatever, right, that you can study and break down, that we don't have about music. I mean, we have a lot of books about music, but they've all come out, what, in the last 100 years, right? Really? I mean, aside from, whatever classical treatises and stuff. The third thing... Ooh, did I forget the third thing? The third thing was the most important thing. Hold on. I gotta rewind myself a little bit.
Retrieval.
What was my first point? Holy shit. Time? Oh. You can go onto Spotify, and there are literally millions of songs that you could choose to listen to. In terms of visual art, yes, you could go out and buy a painting and put it in your house, right? But you have less of a choice of the visual art that you interact with on a regular basis. Like, you don't
But
get
I
to choose a million different houses. You get to choose maybe, I don't know, reasonably a few, right? A handful of different ones that are in a certain area and price located, like whatever. You don't get to be as picky about architecture. You don't
But
get to choose your architecture, whereas you
for
get to
your
choose your...
consideration,
Huh?
video games, simulated spaces, right? Particularly with the
right.
advent of VR. But like I think
But people...
the design of space is something that people are very sensitive to in video games. One of my
Yes.
favorite essayists is Jacob Geller, who's very, very much about he talks a lot about both architecture and level design.
Right. I was going to say people are just as picky about their video games as they are about music. There are some people who play any game. There are some people who only play a very specific type of game. It's the same with
video
music.
games are a combination of multiple art forms.
That's true.
Especially today. Video games are performance art. Video games are visual art. There's another breakdown there, because if we're purely talking about just static visual art, which I'll use as something that you put down and it's there and it can't change, you can't, unlike audio or performance art, that can never be turned up to a volume level that will blow out your eardrums.
Right.
There is, remember that there is that difference, so that there is a very much a difference with static visual art that's just unchangeable, it's there, versus something that is dynamic, which are your performance arts and things like video games, where you literally combine just about every type of art you can think of.
Right. But also, it's not just there. I think that's another important thing. Is with
interact.
visual art, it is there, and that's it. You see it, and then that's it. Whereas more digital art, especially interactive things, there is a point where you turn it off. You get to choose when you stop interacting with it. And I think that makes people react to it very differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Still, though, I think, but I do genuinely think that, you know, there can be as much difference in the intent between musicians as what we would just generically call musicians. I think again, some musicians are going to think like an architect, and some musicians are going to think like a painter, right?
Right.
Because if you think about pop is designed so that it can be appealing to you within the shortest possible listening time, right? They want to ensure that like something grabs you.
Right. My case turns me off immediately, Sam.
Yeah. Right. But in general, like music that is like constructed for appeal, or even within more restrictive genre conventions, like period, it's built around hooks. It's built around like the closest approximation we can have in audio art to the painting experience of like just seeing it and noticing how it affects you. And it's worth noting that, you know, with many paintings, it's worth dissecting them and like looking more closely. Whereas some art is going to be, whereas some audio art, some music is constructed much more like a space, like a building, and that in many ways you have to wander through it and see each of the rooms, see each different environment in order to have a real appreciation for it, like to be able to really say that you understood it.
Interesting.
Right. Which is, and to be fair, you know, we can say that, you know, we judge many buildings by their facades.
And some architectural buildings are designed just to get up, be done, and not to be. You know, it's the same thing even amongst, or within that sub-genre of art, if we will, of architecture, where it's all about function over form, right?
Yeah.
There's not beauty in it. It's just like, it's here to do this purpose.
The architectural equivalent of ad music.
Right.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have music here.
Yeah. I would actually say, for me personally, I think the music that's the most like architecture is something like EDM, where there are very specific things that have to be done every single time, and it's very formulaic, right? You're having very written out things, right? And someone can totally vary from it and do it well, and then we praise that person as a genius architect because they can make something that both is incredible looking and also structurally sound.
Yeah.
And the same thing with EDM, right? You get someone like Skrillex or something, which not really EDM, but you know, where he can play with it in such a way that someone's like, whoa, I couldn't even think of taking these same formulas and then expanding it in this crazy way. Whereas other art that's more performance based on like someone's personality or something like that, right? Or like a ballad, right? Where it's meant to be felt and it's the emotion, right? And that's just kind of you're painting it on. I don't know. That's the way that I saw it. Is
It's a good comparison.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think what you're really drilling into there is that I think what this boils down to is that what I would love to see is a point where we can develop the kind of granularity in our understanding that we can have a person who doesn't like EDM, right?
Right.
And does like classic rock or whatever, right? And is able to say, it's not so much that I think that this is like artistically bad, it's just not what I care about, right? It's like, it's because like, if a person is more affected by sculpture than by architecture, like that's fine. Like
Right.
we don't make any sort of like qualitative moralistic judgments about architecture as a discipline.
You may not. I'm positive there is someone who does.
I'm sure. Oh yeah, people who are very much into architecture.
I am 100%
feel that
positive.
way.
Yeah, we can all agree that they're kind of, but I think if somebody picks their one discipline and thinks it's the only legitimate one, I think we can all agree they're sort of a pompous ass.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that tends
and
to...
that happens in every discipline, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it does.
And the more, because you have two different types of people who really get into a particular discipline. You have the person who just tries to judge everything within their discipline fairly, and says, I just don't like this stuff, but here's why.
Right.
Or I can appreciate this element of it, but I still don't like it.
Right.
And then you have the person who's just like, no.
No, my father went to music school. Rap isn't music. Sorry, just to go back to that example.
Fucking Ben Shapiro, man.
But I do think it goes back to that conversation that we had. I agree with Ethan's points. I think it does come into, you do have to put time into it. I think there is very much a physiological component that doesn't exist in other forms. And in part that comes into the duration, that comes into the fact that there are the way we interact with sound waves versus the way we are looking at a static piece of light bouncing off of a canvas. So I think there's a lot of reasons for it, and then there's personality, right? There's just, this is what you like and everything else sucks. That is a that is certainly prevalent.
Yeah. Here's the trick. Here's my trick. It's like the Hulk. Here's my secret. Everything sucks. And once you've accepted that, it's so much easier to like things.
Everything sucks, then nothing sucks.
Right, exactly. Everything sucks, including you, including me. Right? Everything. So now you cannot be above. You can't be above any form of art because we're all part of suck. So.
All right. So what I'm hearing is, yeah, we're going to start a side project where we do like doomy gospel music, and it will be called Ethan and the Church of Suck.
Oh, that's good.
I like it.
I've accepted at this point that based on the number of jokes we make, we really ought to just be honest with ourselves, and we're just like a band that's just a bunch of side projects.
Isn't that every fucking everyone? I mean, yeah. I suppose less ADD, but
everyone who's not a basically everyone who's not like a manufactured
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
They're like
like
stick for this.
One Direction. Well,
Hey,
okay, credit to One
listen,
Direction.
each
Individual
one
members
of those
One Direction.
guys has their own
Yeah.
career.
That's true. That's fair. That's fair. They've actually spun off pretty well. But like a lot of the boy bands in the early
Well, let's not pretend like we're
I'll tell you the
listening to
difference between
Liam's
any of them. They
music.
all sound the same to me.
No, let's not pretend like anyone's listening to Liam's music or the other one whose name I don't even know.
I don't even know who Liam is.
Exactly! People listen to Zayn, even though he sucks. And people listen to Harry Styles.
Liam was a Hemsworth, Ethan. I thought he was Thor's brother.
There is that.
Sitting there, like, I don't even remember whether Justin Timberlake was in Sync.
Niall? Is that the other one? Or is it Paul? I don't know. They have fucking names. But there's Zayn who sucks, and there's Harry Styles who super sucks. But both of them are hot. And I will give them that. I will give them
Harry
that.
Styles is like best friends with the sisters from Heart. Like, he introduced them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm like, how does this happen? What is going on? Or no, he didn't introduce them. When they played together after the fact.
I mean, okay,
they
just
together,
because
which is weird.
You're different. Like, you could be friends with someone. You know what I mean? Like,
just like the music doesn't even intersect, though.
No,
like,
I mean, I don't think.
How do you become friends with the 80s female rocker badasses who were the first ones to really show women can rock?
Right.
And you're
and then you are
in a boy band.
You are Harry Styles, someone who is the opposite of he literally is. He's not pushing anything. He's not pushing he's literally doing the opposite. He's only doing safe stuff.
Women
like
can rock.
Cookie cutter.
Boys can be soft and pliable.
Right.
But that was already established in the 90s, and
not only that,
like a decade later.
Not only that, but Harry Styles appropriates a lot of like queer culture stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, there'll be a lot of like Harry Styles, but in women's clothing, and they'll do it for like a photo shoot, and it's like cute and playful. But then like he's like, no, I wouldn't do that stuff in my normal day to day. That like, and that's it's literally just his stylist just going, this is what people want.
And Brian, all I will say is that the reason we have new ones is because the ones, like, we reached a point where we all collectively decided that, it's a little weird to have teenage girls teenage and younger girls like freaking out over like 30-year-old men.
Yeah, well, boy bands only work when you still are baby-faced and young, and you have more feminine characteristics. It doesn't work once you hit 40 and you're growing a beard.
Yeah.
And for the record,
but even like
much as I have been mean about boy bands, I am not going to, begrudge teenage girls their inoffensive forays into the safe approximation of relationships, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, it's a little creepy that we commodify it the way we do, and it's probably
no. It's not
going to make fun of the girls for liking it.
It's not the little girl's fault. It's capitalism's fault for creating it. It's not the little girl's fault for liking it. That is
exploiting their.
I mean, it's as exploitive as any other level of the society that we live in. You think about porn, right? Porn is literally just some of our instincts distilled down and combined with some marketing elements to get you to stay addicted and watching it as long as possible. And like, literally everything. TikTok is the same shit.
Period. Yeah.
TikTok, like social media, like it's all the same shit. Like, and like, one is a little more pubescently sexual, which is uncomfortable. But it's not the little girl's fault. It's not. It's not. Exactly. They're little. They're fucking teenagers and shit. When you're 13, anything will fool you, dude. 13-year-olds are the stupidest motherfuckers on the planet. Teenagers are even stupider than small children. You want to know why?
I agree with you.
Because teenagers think they know everything. They think they're smart.
It's true.
There's like
Small children have an excuse.
There's some other large portions of the population I feel like we could apply the same.
Boomers. No, I was literally thinking about this last night, and I'm going to say this on camera now, so I can't do it now, which is fine, because it's not a moral thing to do, but it is a funny thing to do. So I was thinking about how I could make money by just creating like a GoFundMe page that's just like, we need to stop Antifa, and then not saying anything else besides that, besides whatever you would need to say like legally, like we don't condone violence or whatever, right? So and then just posting it on Facebook a bunch of times in those stupid fucking boomer pages, and you would make money for doing nothing.
So I'm going to, like, controversial take. What you're proposing is illegal. I don't think it's immoral.
It's not illegal if I could show a way that I was stopping Antifa. Okay, so this would be my argument. This would be my argument. In this case, like, you would be keeping me off the streets, and that's one less Antifa. So in that way, you are paying to stop Antifa. So it's not false advertising.
Because you're gonna get hit with they're just, this isn't real, and they'll pop you right off. You got to put it somewhere besides like Facebook or Twitter these days.
Well, okay, yes, you can't use the words Antifa. You have to use, if you don't use one of their like catch-all, like one of their trigger words that will trigger the this is fake advertising.
Yeah.
Then you can do it, and the way to do it would just be to get around that. However you could, just don't use those words.
There's always ways.
So,
I'm not gonna do it though. I'm not gonna do it, but it is funny.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't advocate for you doing it, but I will say that I personally don't consider it unethical. Don't do it.
I'm not.
But I don't personally consider it unethical at all. I might even consider it the opposite, but don't do it. I have told you not to do it, so I can say whatever else I want.
Right.
Sam's doing what we call the covering your ass move.
On Twitch, they say in Minecraft. That's what they say. So they say something like this is just an example. This is not. I just want to be clear. This is just an example. Oh, someone should assassinate the president in Minecraft. And then it gets past the Twitch censors, right? The Twitch censors. That's what they do.
It's kind of like if we do it in a World of Darkness game.
Oh, God.
No comment. No comment. Role-playing is all about fantasy. It's all about living fantasies. And
Exactly. And man, is it a fantasy.
Stop. No, I will not go any further with this on the live stream. I will not.
I think we leave it there.
Yeah.
Well, we have gotten far astray from the performance.
Okay, let's be honest though. How much is there to actually say about it? Because there's a lot going on, and it's very interesting. But like, it is so far outside of our idea of music critique that all of our conventional language doesn't really apply to it. Like some of it may, like Sam was talking about with percussive elements and stuff like that, right? We can get into the tones of the oscillators and stuff like that. But aside from that, it's so far, yeah.
More audio art in a term that is like using that word in a way that is directly saying, yeah, it is very distinct from what we would normally consider music.
Right.
This definitely gets this is, I think, the first album or performance that gets a 10 in weird factor for me. I just think it deserves it. It's earned it.
Yeah.
You know, it is at that level of uniqueness.
Right. That's fair. I think I'd have to agree. I think almost all other ratings towards it don't really matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Cohesion, yeah, I mean, it was.
It's the same for plants.
In fact, I would give it a 10 out of 10 in cohesion
I
because
agree.
it's all one thing. It's never not that thing. It's like that's like calling a big boulder that you find cohesive. Because yeah, it is. It's just a fucking boulder. Like if you broke it apart and glued it back together, then yes, it would be less cohesive. But like
more adhesive. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it gets a 10.
Yeah.
10 in cohesion. That's good though, Sam. It was.
Musicality, musicianship, listenability. I was combining those two.
I don't even know how to rate musicianship on this.
How would you rate those plants? How good are the plants?
We're in the pocket.
To be honest, the plants were pretty good.
Yeah.
The plants are pretty good. Way better than I'd expect the plant to be, right?
Yeah.
I've heard people who play worse than those plants.
Without question.
Yes.
So here's, like, in an attempt to give this thing some credit, which I feel like, you know, if the chance the poor guy stumbles across this, and he's probably already, like, given up on the idea that we're going to sort of talk about.
After we talked about killing the president. I think that's when
we didn't talk about that at all.
We didn't.
I actually do
Those are fantasies. Not real.
It all happened in Minecraft.
Exactly.
What I do think he's accomplished something cool here, in that many musicians would think, like, oh, I want to talk about, you know, the ways in which, you know, we're all sort of, we exist surrounded by rhythm, right? We are constantly inundated with, you know, things that can be broken down in terms of frequency, oscillation, you know, rising and falling. And somebody could say, I want to write an album that, like, evokes that kind of wonder for the natural world, right? And I don't know that it would have been as effective as what he did here.
Yeah.
I think directly demonstrating these oscillations was genuinely really inspired, and does more effectively convey and, like, inflame that kind of curiosity, and that beginning to realize that music is inextricably tied in with science and the natural world, right? Like, it's not separate. It's not just this aesthetic thing that exists in a vacuum, right? It is this very, like, tangible, physical thing. So I think he's done an excellent job there, and, like,
I agree.
Props.
Yeah. You know, so, well, I would say this is what I want from James Cameron in the Avatar movies. Instead of him trying to kind of create the sounds of plants and nature, this really is.
Yeah.
And that's, again, like, that, I think that really does. This dovetails well with a lot of reading that I've been doing that I won't bore everyone with this late into the podcast. But, like, this idea that we've focused, like, artists have kind of been victim to this anthropocentric frame, right? That basically everyone has been for the past 100 years. But, like, like, scientists have been, like, it's been that way for a long time, right? We've, like, basically since we moved away from animism and started deciding that every god had to look like a human and act like a human and think like a human, right?
Right.
Every large force. And I think this is a really interesting act of translation rather than projection.
Yeah.
it is focusing on like just not like talking about what a human's experience of the plant is, but just trying to render the plant's speech in a language that we can perceive. And that's a much more honest, and again, like awe-inspiring, and I think like genuinely engendering a genuine connection to the natural world versus this kind of like, I watch a lot of nature documentaries and I feel bad about climate, kind of artificial, still very anthropocentric view, managerial view of the natural world. It puts us more in relationship with than in observation of what's being depicted. So A+. Want to see people doing more of this stuff.
Agreed. It's very creative and unique. I personally think that while something like this would never in a million years get radio play, I think that these kind of projects are really the foundation for greater impact in the way that we can then perceive music and audio art in general, and that will eventually affect something that does see radio play. Like doing things that are super experimental like this, it pushes the boundaries of what we can, conceive as art or as what we conceive as possible to do, right?
And I mean, I think it really is the true exemplification of what art actually is supposed to be, right? It's the creativity. There's, this is not something that 100 people have done before, and that gets harder and harder to do as time goes by.
Yeah.
I will say I want it to get radio play just for the interview with the plants, because whenever you play music, at some point you have to interview the band, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like Yoko Ono's Dead Bird solo. Oh, sorry, it's a dead rat. It was a dead rat.
Also, those plants, it was like grass and shit, right? Definitely dead.
Yeah.
Definitely dead. Like,
we could interview their loosely connected family.
Yeah.
Interview the estate.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Shift your oscillation up, up in frequency for yes and down for no.
Oh, it's like a seance type thing. Okay, let's go. Let's go.
It's better. It's less destructive and unpleasant than reading chicken on trails, and will probably yield similarly accurate results.
Yeah. Yeah, or astrology, really.
Yeah.
Ding.
Or just religion in general, Ethan. Oh,
yeah.
Did I say that?
And I think, not to go down another tangent, but I do want to say that I used projection versus translation as like a dirty word there earlier, and I think that like astrology and religion do highlight, and in many more confessional kinds of art do highlight that there's a utility in art as projection, as
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Like, and I think for the same reason, like as much as it, like I'm like getting down on like divinatory exercise, I think as an outlet for like clarifying the contents of your own subconscious, it's incredibly useful.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I was just making a joke. I think that those things are I mean, obviously anything can be dangerous, but I wouldn't condemn any,
Yeah. I just think what it comes down to is like a crucial level of self-awareness, right? When somebody's trying to use astrology to like, I don't know, make stock picks, or using it for hiring, or using it like to determine things and decide things about people, that worries me.
Right.
But as a tool for better understanding yourself.
Yeah, I think money and astrology, I think that's the best way you could put opposites. Like,
except for the people who are making those astrological forecasts.
Right? No, they're making
a shitload of money.
I mean, in terms of Yeah, you
But-
don't want a random number generator buying stocks for you. I mean, maybe
Oh,
you
well,
do.
in fairness, people use that. I mean, when they're using it's computer software to do it,
all I'm gonna
yes,
say
there are
is
algorithms, but still random numbers in there.
It's true.
there exists a chimp who has beat the market, and I don't care how much you tell me that that's just statistically probable that
Oh,
there would
no,
be a
yeah,
chimp
yeah.
that could beat the market. I'm
Uh,
going to choose to believe that it is the chimp's acumen
I
and
think
not.
in
Yeah,
terms,
there's a chimp that beat the market. His name's Donald Trump. Somehow he beat the market his way into the office, presidential office.
We weren't gonna go orangutan there. Just
Yeah, orangutan. Yeah, it's more an orangutan. We got to go the right color.
I think, but okay,
Although, frankly, I think orangutans have demonstrated a much more robust capacity for empathy. So
right.
Which is kind of unfair to the orangutans then, because
Um,
clearly Trump has none.
Yeah, no, there was a Come Town bit about a guy who gets off for child rape becoming
Oh my
the
God, that is one of the
wait
most disgraceful commercials I have seen
no
so far.
wait, is that real? Is that a real commercial?
Yes, Trump is doing this as an actual
Oh,
ad where he's saying the Biden campaign supported this because Harris was involved in this guy getting out, and it's all kinds of bullshit.
oh yeah, so there was a bit about that guy becoming the spokesperson for a gambling website because no one beat the odds better than him.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah. Anyway,
I think when Jared gets out of prison, he's going to go back and do ads for Subway for kids.
I don't think Jared is. They're gonna get him back to Subway. But Jared, yeah, Jared should do gambling websites. Except he went to prison, so.
He did indeed.
I thought you meant Jared Kushner at first for a second. I was
Yeah.
like, wait,
Oh,
he's
we
in
know-
prison?
I was going to say, you can't call him a pedophile because he's a 12-year-old, so it's,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Jared Kushner is. To be fair to Jared Kushner is the person in that administration that the alt-right hates the most because he's Jewish. So he's he's like an infiltrator. So
However,
literally anything that happens in the Trump administration that Nazis don't like, they blame on Jared Kushner.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking.
well,
He gets to touch the royal pussy.
just because he's hated by Nazis, unfortunately, doesn't mean he's not a terrible human being.
Oh no, yeah,
Oh, he
no.
still is.
Oh no, yeah.
He 100% still is.
Before we finish it off, let me go into anecdote town about Jared Kushner. During the when the pandemic was first kicking off, he was leading the pandemic response, and this is the thing that he chose to do. So, what they did is the government got a bunch of ventilators and medical equipment, and instead of just giving it to hospitals that needed it, they auctioned it off to the highest bidder. And who saw the proceeds of that? Well, they didn't. They sold it to a company which then did that. So their friend's company bought it from the government at the price that the hospitals would have paid and then auctioned it off to the highest bidder. So instead of just giving people relief like they needed, their friends just made a bunch of money and people died that didn't need to die. So
is stimulating the economy.
So it's stimulating some very specific people's wallets. But that was all orchestrated by Jared Kushner. So fuck that guy. There is definitely
He's gotta watch while his wife is fucked by her own father.
There's
that.
Is definitely some people who have died in the United States who
because of him,
who may have not died if he hadn't done that.
Well, there's tens of thousands that have died because of Trump, so there's that.
Yeah. If it was Joe Biden, 2 million would have died. I love that line because it's the stupidest thing ever.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's like they keep bringing up the H1N1 thing.
Right.
12,000 people died from H1N1.
Right.
That is 1/5 of the current total. So,
right.
yeah,
They were. Yeah. They.
A lot less than 1/5.
Yeah. No. There's 200,000 people have died. Right. It's like.
Now.
Yeah. It's,
no, I'm sorry. I meant to say it's 5%, not 1/5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like.
Yes. I had the 5 right. I just used it in the wrong decimal point.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean,
of
completely.
I think
a completely different
take that.
disease. Yeah. Completely different disease.
Yeah.
Amateur numbers.
But this isn't, politic club. I'm definitely I want to express our political opinions, especially against Trump in this fucking time, in this very trying time. But I don't want to harp on it too much because this is, you know what I'm saying.
There are other channels.
Exactly. Like
right.
I'm not censoring us. We've expressed our opinions, but I don't want to stay on that topic for forever. But I think this is a good point to wrap. I think we did all the 10s. Which 10 didn't we do? Listenability. That's the one that we didn't do.
And our overall.
But we'll all have different overalls. I think with this kind of thing we can decide as a group on the other ones, because I don't really think that.
Listen, it's nice as kind of neat background music for listenability, and it's neat as like a
It's not as low as it could be for something like this. There is there's music that is equally as abstract that is extremely hard to listen to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
like
I don't know.
Shatner.
Personally, I'm at 6. Given the context, 6.
I think that feels right for listenability.
Yeah. All right, let's do.
Yeah, it's like you're not gonna listen to it a bunch of times over and over, but it's nice for the runtime.
Yeah.
When you're like, I wanna hear this.
Yeah.
There's no point at which you're like, oh my god, please be over.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. So let's do our overalls. I'll give you a second. To ruminate in your brain. If we had a sponsor, this would be the time that we went to sponsor. If we had viewers, we would have a sponsor. First you get viewers, then you get sponsors. There's a lot of audio brands that sponsor Twitch streamers and stuff.
You say that, Quibi begs to differ.
That's true. First you get sponsors, and then you don't get viewers. First you get Chrissy Teigen, and that's all you get. I don't know. There's got to be a funny way to.
I wouldn't know who Chrissy Teigen was if I ran over her on the street.
I mean, I know what she looks like.
I have no idea.
I know what she looks like.
I feel like it'd be harder to recognize anyone after running them over, but.
I don't know why she's supposed to be famous. I have no idea.
She's a model.
Name, that's all I know.
She's a model. No. She used to be a model. I don't think she models anymore. And she's married to John Legend.
One of those things that I feel like you only learn at a certain age before you can watch porn. Like,
unless they're really famous. Unless they're really famous. Yeah. Because there's regular models, and you would only know them if you needed to, if you were I don't know, in the fashion world, or if you were if you were I don't know, an artist who needed references or something, whatever, or a photographer, right? Or there are certain Heidi Klum, right? Everyone knows the name, right?
I know, but I also know who Heidi Klum was because her height of popularity was when I was in high school. That was when she first really became known. So
that's fair.
That's the era where you really learn.
I mean, okay.
Or if they do other things where they do some acting, or they show up in a TV show, or in porn,
Right. Rosie Huntington Whiteley. Everyone knows her because she was in Transformers. And she got a couple other, but like
Oh,
it's Transformers,
and
right?
she was terrible in Transformers, which is really saying something.
I mean, it's Transformers. Literally, they were just like, let's just get a hot girl. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Megan Fox is actually a decent actor. Okay, she's decent.
It's true. She's just a bitch. But
at
least that's what I hear. I don't know.
Feel
Never
like
met her.
she was like exploited by the industry.
All I ever heard was that she like completely fled public life because she got kind of really taken advantage of.
Yeah, but
she married Brian Austin Green, which, unless again you were in high school in the 90s, you probably should have no idea who that is.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know who that is. But like, there are some models that are. I don't even know why we're talking about this.
Overall, because we needed a delay while we were coming up with our overalls.
Yeah, and we are not thinking about our overalls anymore, are we? Think about them. Sponsored by. Let me come up with a fake sponsor. Sponsored by. I'm literally trying to think of like joke things like dick pills and like pube shaving things, but those are all things that actually sponsor YouTube channels.
Which makes it even better.
Little Richard's dick shrinking pills.
Oh, dick shrinking pills. Oh, the movie that we watched last night, there was a serum that turns off your dick. Sponsored by your dick turning off serum.
The only all homeopathic remedy to elephantitis of the cock.
Yeah. Cure any erection.
Natural ingredients. This message has not been approved by the FDA, nor will it ever be.
That's right. Are you thinking about your score right now?
I don't know about that, Sam. You know what? Trump's FDA, if he gets another 4 years, feels like something they might
dick
approve.
turning off pills. I mean...
Pence needs that. He has to make sure it doesn't work when he's around other women besides his wife.
You mean men. I am 100%. Listen. I am 100% positive. My gaydar, like, when I see Pence...
would ever have sex with Mike Pence?
No, that's not... But that doesn't determine your sexuality.
That's true. That's fair. That's true.
When I see Mike Pence... My gaydar goes, wee 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 wee. Like, and just how anti-gay he is.
Oh yeah,
it
could be him and
only
Lindsey
makes
Graham.
sense.
I don't want to say I can see that because that's a terrible image.
Saying that they're like widely considered to be like kind of the extant closeted Republicans.
Right. Is Lindsey Graham the one that got caught in the bathroom? Is Lindsey Graham the one that got caught in the bathroom? I don't remember.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, what I've been seeing, I am spreading what may be fake news, but what I've been seeing is evidently in Washington, D.C., among male escorts, there is a very well-known Lady G as a caller.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All I will say is is Mike Pence. If you're watching this right now, I accept you for who you are. I accept you for who you are. You're an evil piece of shit, and you've hurt a lot of people, but I accept you for who you are sexually. No one should judge you for that. That may be part of the reason why you turned into an evil piece of shit. And I think that if there's any Republican senators that are watching this right now, who have homosexual urges, you can message me, DM me privately, not like for like sex stuff, but like DM me privately. We can have a conversation. I promise I won't tell anyone. I'm here for you. Okay.
I'm just imagining.
I think we have to end on that note because that's the greatest thing I've ever heard.
Right.
I give the.
Give your out of 10s, and then we'll just abruptly end it.
I give the album either a 9 or a 10. I want to see a lot more stuff like it. I do think I can't even express what I want to see, but I have a feeling he can do more with it. So I'm glad that he's releasing a lot of shit and doing more of this, because I think he's still in the process of honing the craft. It's good. I think there are some like macro scale projects he could do that would also be really cool. But maybe I need to do those, and I shouldn't be docking him points for doing a thing that for failing to do a thing that I'm thinking of in my head. So you know what? I'm going to give it a 10. I want to see more stuff like this. It's music that I think everyone would be enriched by having like an authentic listening experience to it. Like, just gives you a more appreciation for the very alive nature of the world we inhabit, right?
Right. Agreed. I agree with that sentiment. I'll probably give it an 8, but the sentiment is exactly the same. Brian?
I'm with you, Ethan. I would give it an 8. I think, it's hard to truly give a rating to because of its uniqueness. But I agree with everything Sam said.
Awesome. And now we'll abruptly end. Republican senators, call me. Don't call me. I don't want to hear you on the phone. I don't want to, like, the breathing, the old man breath. I'm not disgusted by you. Just your actions. Anyway, everyone